Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku had to defeat Ochako's 7 evil exes to date her. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. Izuku Midoriya, age 17, occupation, 3rd year hero course student at UA High School, quirk, one for all, super strength, speed, and a bunch of other overpowered nonsense he was still figuring out. Current status, pathetically, hopelessly, overwhelmingly in love. A floating, pixelated text box hovered briefly in Izuku's peripheral vision displaying this exact information, complete with a tiny, 8-bit sprite of his own face looking incredibly stressed. Izuku blinked, and the text box vanished. He rubbed his eyes. He really needed to stop staying up until 3 a.m. analyzing underground hero patrol routes. His brain was starting to overlay video game interfaces onto reality again. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of the Class 3A dormitories, casting a warm, golden hue over the chaotic assortment of All Might posters, action figures, and limited edition Silver Age comic books that lined Izuku's walls. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring down at his scarred hands. Today was the day. He had decided this last night after precisely 3 hours of staring at the ceiling, and 1 hour of aggressively muttering to himself. Today, he was going to ask Ochako Uraraka out on a date. Just the thought of it made a phantom health bar appear above his head, and it instantly dropped by 20%. HP, 80/100. Status effect, severe nausea. Right, Izuku whispered to himself, slapping both cheeks with his palms to psych himself up. Right. Plus ultra. Go beyond. It's just a question. A simple, terrifying, life-altering question. He dressed quickly, pulling on his uniform, taking extra care to actually tie his red tie properly instead of leaving it in its usual chaotic knot. He even attempted to tame his unruly, forest green curls, a futile endeavor that ended with him breaking a comb and apologizing to the plastic shards. When he stepped out into the common room, the usual morning chaos was in full swing. Denki Kaminari was attempting to toast bread using his quirk and setting off the fire alarm, while Katsuki Bakugo yelled aggressively at a carton of milk for expiring. But Izuku's eyes immediately sought out Tenya Ida, his bespectacled best friend, who was currently orchestrating the breakfast line with robotic, chopping arm motions. Ah, Midoriya! Good morning! Ida boomed, his voice carrying over the din. Your tie is tied with an acceptable 70% accuracy today. A marked improvement. Are you prepared for our advanced urban combat logistics seminar? Izuku trotted over, grabbing a piece of non-electrocuted toast. Morning, Ida. Yeah, I'm ready for the seminar. But, I actually have another objective for today. Ida pushed his glasses up his nose, the lenses flashing with anime-esque opacity. Another objective? Have the teachers assigned a secret practical exam? I must review the syllabus. No, Izuku said, lowering his voice and glancing around nervously. It's about Uraraka. Ida froze. His robotic arms slowly lowered. He looked at Izuku, his expression deadly serious. Midoriya. Are you finally going to initiate the romantic courtship protocol? I wouldn't call it a protocol, but yes. Izuku swallowed hard. Over the past 2 years, things had shifted. During their first year, Izuku and Ochako had been inseparable. But second year had brought intense hero work studies, new threats, and a grueling training regimen. Ochako had grown somewhat distant, diving into her hero work with a terrifying, almost self-destructive intensity. She had transferred out of his primary combat group for specialized rescue training, dyed a single, striking streak of magenta into her auburn bob, which she now let grow out to her shoulders, and started wearing a combat jacket that made her look effortlessly, intimidatingly cool. She had become something of an enigma. A beautiful, gravity-defying enigma who smelled like strawberries and occasionally bench-pressed more than Kaminari. It is about time, Ida said, placing a heavy, supportive hand on Izuku's shoulder. Your pining has been a statistical anomaly in our otherwise efficient friendship dynamic. Have you formulated a stratagem? A location? A contingency plan for rejection? I was thinking, the new cat cafe downtown. Paws and claws. It's quiet, and she likes cats. Izuku's face felt hot. Contingency plan is, cry in my room and focus entirely on hero work until I graduate. A flawed but acceptable fallback, Ida nodded sagely. Go forth, Midoriya. Be the hero of your own heart. A little pixelated 10 confidence floated up from Izuku's head. Class 3 as homeroom was loud. Izuku sat at his desk, his leg bouncing nervously. He had spent the first 20 minutes of the period pretending to read his textbook, but his eyes kept drifting toward the door. Then, she walked in, entering area, Ochako Uraraka. Level? She walked with a newfound swagger, her Yui blazer left unbuttoned, revealing a slightly scuffed graphic tee underneath. The magenta streak in her hair caught the fluorescent lights. She was laughing at something Tsuyu Ajiri had said, her eyes crinkling at the corners. For a moment, the entire classroom seemed to blur out, leaving only her in sharp, high-definition focus. An angelic 16-bit harp glissando played softly in Izuku's mind. She looked over, caught his staring, and smiled. Hey Deku, GUH morning Uraraka. Izuku squeaked, his voice cracking spectacularly. Critical miss, she giggled, walking over to his desk. You good? You look a little red. Present Mike hasn't even started yelling yet. I'm good. Great. Excellent, actually. Izuku babbled, his hands waving frantically. He took a deep breath. Execute stratagem. Uraraka. I was wondering if you, maybe, had some free time this weekend? Ochako tilted her head, her large brown eyes blinking in curiosity. This weekend? I don't have a work-study shift until Sunday evening. Why? You want to train? I learned a new grapple from Gunhead that I've been dying to test out. No, Izuku said, a bit too loudly. The class went quiet for a split second before returning to their chatter. He lowered his voice, his face burning like a solar flare. No training. I meant, a date. With me, to the cat cafe. If you want to. As a date. The silence between them felt like it stretched out for a millennium. Izuku watched her face closely. He expected confusion, or maybe a polite rejection. What he didn't expect was a flash of genuine panic to cross her features. She looked away, her fingers fiddling with the hem of her jacket. A date, she repeated softly. Why yeah. But if you're busy, or if you don't see me that way, I completely. No! Ochako interrupted, looking back at him. Her cheeks were dusted with pink. No, Deku. I'd really like that. A lot. Izuku's brain short-circuited. Victory fanfare plays. A massive, glowing banner reading achievement unlocked. Secured the date materialized in his mind's eye. Saturday? At 1? Izuku managed to say. It's a date, she smiled, though there was a strange, nervous edge to her voice that Izuku couldn't quite place. Before he could analyze it, the classroom door slammed open, and Shota Aizawa slithered in via his yellow sleeping bag. Saturday arrived with a terrifying swiftness. Izuku stood in front of the mirror in his dorm room, critically analyzing his outfit. He had opted for a red button-down shirt over a white undershirt, dark jeans, and of course, his signature red high-top sneakers. He looked, okay. Like a slightly elevated version of his usual nerdy self. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. New message from Hatsum May, the clingy mechanic. May, hey muscle text dummy. Need you in the support studio. I made a jetpack that runs on anxiety. May, where are you? May, I'm tracking your GPS. Why are you wearing cologne? Are you betraying my babies? Izuku sighed, quickly swiping the notifications away. During his second year, May had somehow convinced herself that their frequent gear testing sessions were dates. She was intense, completely oblivious to social cues, and terrifyingly possessive of her favorite test subject. He needed to have a serious talk with her, but today was not the day. He met Ochako outside the UA gates. She took his breath away. She was wearing a casual off-the-shoulder pink sweater, a denim skirt, and black boots. The magenta streak in her hair was braided back. Hey, she said, blushing slightly under his gaze. Why you look amazing, Izuku stammered, his internal monologue screaming at him to be cool. Thanks. You clean up nice yourself, Deku. The walk to downtown Mizudafu was pleasant, if a bit awkward. They talked about school, their upcoming provisional license renewals, and hero gossip. But beneath the surface, there was a palpable tension. Izuku couldn't shake the feeling that Ochako was constantly looking over her shoulder, as if expecting an ambush. Paws and Claws was located on a quiet street corner. The interior was cozy, filled with warm wood accents, plush armchairs, and elaborate jungle gyms for the feline residents. They ordered their drinks, a matcha latte for Izuku, a strawberry mocha for Ochako, and settled into a booth near the large front window. A fat, orange tabby cat immediately jumped onto the table and began purring aggressively at Ochako. "Ah, look at him," Ochako cooed, scratching the cat behind the ears. "He's like a little vibrating bread loaf." "He likes you," Izuku smiled, feeling his nerves finally start to settle. This was nice. This was normal. He was on a date with the girl of his dreams, surrounded by cats. Nothing could ruin this. "Deku," Ochako said softly, her eyes focused on the cat. I'm really glad we're doing this. I know I've been kind of weird the past couple of years." Distant. "You don't have to apologize, Uraraka. We've all been busy. Hero work is demanding." "It's not just that," she sighed, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. I got lonely, Deku. When you and Todoroki and Bakugo were always off doing these huge, world-saving things, I felt like I was falling behind. And I distracted myself. I made some really bad choices in who I spent my time with." Izuku frowned, leaning forward. "What do you mean?" "I dated some people. Guys. And they were, well, complicated is a nice word for it." She looked up at him, her brown eyes wide and fearful. "I just don't want my past to ruin this. Because you're important to me, Izuku." Izuku's heart did a triple backflip. She used his given name. Critical hit to the heart. Damage, 9999. He reached across the table, his scarred hand gently covering hers. "Ochako," he said, surprising himself with his own steadiness. "I don't care about your past. I care about you. Here. Now." Ochako's eyes welled with tears. She smiled, turning her hand over to interlock her fingers with his. It was a perfect, cinematic moment. The afternoon light filtered through the window, highlighting the dust motes in the air. The orange cat purred. The world was at peace. Crash! The massive front window of the cafe exploded inward in a shower of tempered glass. Izuku's instincts fired instantly. He activated full cowl, green lightning crackling around his body, and threw himself over Ochako, shielding her and the orange cat from the flying shrapnel. Screams erupted from the other patrons. Cats scattered in every direction, yowling in panic. The dust from the shattered window billowed into the cafe. Through the settling smoke, a silhouette emerged. "Ah, mon amour! Did you really think you could enjoy a petite rendezvous without me noticing?" A spotlight, literally, a physical spotlight originating from nowhere, snapped down onto the figure. Standing in the ruins of the cafe window, striking a pose that defied anatomical logic, was Yuga Oyama. But he didn't look like the Oyama from Class 3A. He was clad in a blindingly brilliant suit of medieval-style knight's armor, made entirely of shimmering, mirrored crystal. A massive purple cape billowed dramatically behind him, despite there being no wind. A floating text box, bordered in glittering gold, materialized above his head. Boss encounter, Yuga Oyama. Status, Evil X1. Class, the sparkling sniper. Izuku slowly stood up, pushing Ochako safely behind him. He looked at Aoyama, utterly bewildered. "Aoyama? What are you doing? You destroyed the window. There are cats here." Aoyama flipped his blonde hair, sending a shower of literal sparkles into the air. "Silence, you plain-looking extra. I am not merely your classmate today, Midoriya. I am the vanguard of heartbreak, the glittering blade of retribution." Ochako stepped out from behind Izuku, her face pale. "Yuga. Please. Not here. I told you, it's over." "Over?" Aoyama laughed, a melodic, haughty sound. Non, my sweet Machi. It is never over. You cannot simply discard the sparkle we shared." Izuku looked back and forth between them, his brain struggling to process the data. Wait. Uraraka. You and Aoyama. Ochako buried her face in her hands, groaning in sheer embarrassment. It was for 2 weeks in second year. We were paired up for a stealth exercise. We got trapped in a cave. He wouldn't stop crying, and I felt bad for him. We went on 3 dates, and all he did was talk about his pores. It was a passionate whirlwind romance. Aoyama declared, pointing a gauntlet finger at Izuku. And you, Midoriya? You think you can just swoop in and steal her away? Moi, the shining star of UA. You must face the consequences. What consequences? Izuku yelled, slipping into a fighting stance out of pure habit. The League of Evil Exes. Aoyama shouted to the heavens. Thunder literally clapped outside. We have formed an alliance. A syndicate of the scorned. If you wish to date Uraraka, you must defeat all 7 of us in mortal combat. 7? Izuku whipped his head around to look at Ochako. You have 7 evil exes? I'm sorry! Ochako wailed, her hands glowing as she activated her zero-gravity quirk, preparing to fight. I had a really rebellious phase. And bad taste. I'm so sorry, Deku. Enough chit-chat. Aoyama roared. Prepare to be blinded by my love. Naval laser, supernova. Aoyama thrust his hips forward. The belt of his crystal armor opened up, revealing his quirk-enhancing belt. A beam of concentrated, blinding light erupted from his stomach, but it wasn't a normal laser. As the beam shot toward Izuku, it suddenly splintered into dozens of smaller, glowing golden orbs and sweeping, purple geometric lasers. The cafe was instantly transformed into a neon-drenched, bullet-hell video game arena. The lasers bounced off the walls, moving in complex, shifting patterns. Warning, boss phase 1 initiated. Get back! Izuku yelled to Ochako. He activated One for All at 8%, feeling the familiar, comforting surge of power. Time seemed to slow down. His analytical mind, honed by years of taking notes on quirks, immediately went to work. The golden orbs follow a wave pattern. The purple lasers sweep in a 45-degree arc every 3 seconds. If I calculate the trajectory, Izuku moved. He didn't just dodge, he danced. He leaped off a table, flipping over a sweeping purple beam, landed on the counter, and slid under a cluster of golden orbs. Green lightning trailed behind him like an afterimage. Stand still and be dazzled! Aoyama cried, twisting his hips to send a rapid-fire barrage of lasers directly at Izuku. Izuku engaged his full cowl shoot style. He kicked off the wall, using the momentum to propel himself into the air. He was closing the distance. You're ruining our date, Aoyama! Izuku shouted, spinning midair. Love is a battlefield, Midoriya! Aoyama retorted, his armor clanking. He crossed his arms. Sparkle shield, a barrier of hard light crystal formed in front of Aoyama. Izuku brought his leg down in a vicious axe kick. Clang! A massive, comic book-style sound effect word bubble, smash, briefly materialized in the air. The shield shattered like glass, but Aoyama slid backward, grinning. Not bad for a novice, Aoyama chuckled. But you forget. I have style. Naval laser, disco inferno. Aoyama jumped into the air, spinning rapidly. Lasers fired in a 360-degree radius, a blinding strobe light of destruction. The cafe's furniture was being sliced to ribbons. The remaining cats were huddled behind the barista counter, looking extremely annoyed. Izuku hit the ground, forced to take cover behind an overturned espresso machine. The metal hissed as lasers scored the other side. He's firing indiscriminately, Izuku thought, his mind racing. He's wearing heavy armor, but his quirk still gives him a stomachache if he overuses it. The crystal armor is refracting the light, amplifying it. If I can shatter the chest plate, the refraction stops. Deku! Ochako yelled. She was floating near the ceiling, having used her quirk on herself. Catch! She touched a heavy oak table, making it weightless, and kicked it down toward Izuku. Release! She cried, pressing her fingertips together. The table suddenly regained its mass mid-air, plummeting toward Aoyama. Aoyama stopped spinning, looking up in shock. Sacred blue! He fired a massive laser upward, blowing the table to splinters. But it was the distraction Izuku needed. One for all, 15%. Izuku muttered, his muscles bulging slightly beneath his shirt. He dashed forward, moving faster than the eye could track. He weaved through the remaining scattered lasers, the Gray's mechanic giving him a phantom boost to his speed. He appeared directly in front of Aoyama. "It's over, Aoyama," Izuku said, drawing his fist back. The air around his arm distorted with sheer pressure. "No! My beautiful face!" Aoyama shrieked, throwing his arms up. "Detroit!" Izuku roared, driving his fist forward. He didn't aim for the face. He aimed square for the center of the crystal chest plate. Smash! The impact was like a bomb going off. A shockwave ripped through the cafe, blowing the remaining glass out of the frames and sending loose napkins flying like confetti. Aoyama's eyes went comically wide. A giant red critical hit, 9,999 DMG, floated above his head. "Ah," Aoyama whispered. "I have been outshined." Aoyama flew backward, smashing straight through the ceiling of the cafe, then through the floor of the apartment above it, and out through the roof of the building, disappearing into the sky like a twinkling star. Ding! Izuku stood panting, the green lightning slowly fading from his body. He looked up at the hole in the ceiling. Suddenly, a shower of objects rained down from the hole. Izuku held out his hands. Several wedges of highly expensive, imported French brie cheese landed in his palms, along with a massive cascade of shiny 500 yen coins that clattered loudly against the floor. Victory! 1,000 EXP gained. Item dropped. Gourmet cheese X4. Gold gained. 15,000 yen. Izuku stared at the cheese. He stared at the coins. What just happened? Did I kill him? Did he turn into currency? Ochako floated down, landing softly next to him. She looked around the destroyed cafe. Miraculously, none of the cats or the barista were hurt, though the barista was already dialing his insurance company with a look of dead-eyed resignation. "He's not dead," Ochako sighed, rubbing her temples. "It's a thing. When you defeat one of my exes in a duel, they temporarily disintegrate into items that represent their personality, and they get teleported to the respawn point at the UA infirmary. Recovery Girl says it's a very specific, annoying psychological manifestation of their quirks combined with localized reality warping." Izuku slowly lowered his arms. He dropped the cheese on the counter. "Uraraka. What exactly is going on?" Ochako grabbed Izuku's hand and pulled him out of the ruined cafe, leaving a stack of the dropped 500 yen coins on the counter to pay for the damages. They walked in silence until they reached a quiet park down the street. She sat down on a bench, looking utterly defeated. Izuku sat next to her, giving her space. "I really wanted today to be perfect," she whispered. "It was memorable," Izuku offered gently. She let out a wet half-laugh. "Deku, I have a lot of baggage. When I said I dated during my second year, I wasn't just talking about normal high school drama. I dated guys who were intense. Guys who were, frankly, kind of evil. Or at least, incredibly arrogant and petty." "Aoyama isn't evil," Izuku pointed out. "Just theatrical. He's the weakest one," Ochako warned, looking at him with serious eyes. "The bottom of the hierarchy. If they really formed a league, it means the others are coming. And they are so much worse than Aoyama. They won't just throw lasers and pose. They'll try to break you. They'll try to humiliate you so you'll leave me alone." Izuku looked down at his scarred hands. He thought about the villains he had faced. He thought about Shigaraki, about Overhaul, about the sheer terror of fighting for his life. Then he looked at Ochako. He looked at the way the afternoon sun caught the magenta streak in her hair. He remembered the feeling of her hand in his, the warmth of her smile when she agreed to this date. He wasn't the quirkless, timid boy he used to be. He was the successor of One for All. But more importantly, he was Izuku Midoriya, and he was in love. A new text box appeared in his vision. Quest received, defeat the 7 evil exes. Reward true love. Do you accept? Yes/no. Izuku didn't even hesitate. He mentally slammed the yes button. He turned to Ochako, a fierce, determined fire burning in his emerald eyes. He gave her the bright, unwavering smile he usually reserved for rescuing civilians. "Uraraka," he said, his voice steady. "I've fought maniacs, I've broken my bones 100 times, and I've stood up to the symbol of evil. If I have to fight 7 guys with bruised egos to hold your hand again, then that's what I'm going to do. Ochako stared at him, her lips parted in shock. A deep blush spread across her face, traveling all the way to her ears. Deku, you're crazy. You know that, right? You're an absolute madman. I've been told, he grinned. So, who's next on the list? Ochako smiled back, a genuine, radiant smile that made Izuku's heart flutter. She reached out and took his hand again, her thumb brushing over his scars. Well, she said softly, I hope you're good at dealing with earthquakes. Because X number 2 is a real piece of work. High above them, a retro, 8-bit tune played on the wind. The game had officially begun. Player 1 ready. Save file loaded. Midoriya _Izuku slot _1. Location: UA Heights Alliance Class 3A dorms. Current objective: survive the morning. Izuku Midoriya woke up feeling like he had been run over by a bullet train driven by all might. He lay flat on his back, staring at the ceiling of his dorm room. A blinking, translucent text box hovered directly above his face. Status: exhausted. HP: 350/1000. Mana: Alpha limit 100%. Debuff: high school gossip anxiety incoming. He blinked, and the interface vanished. It was Sunday morning. The events of yesterday, the cat cafe, holding Ochako Uraraka's hand, the sudden appearance of Yuga Aoyama in blinding crystal armor, the laser bullet hell boss fight, and Aoyama bursting into imported brie and 500 yen coins, played in his mind on a continuous, inescapable loop. It hadn't been a dream. The bruised knuckles on his right hand and the stack of shiny coins currently sitting on his desk were empirical proof. 7 evil exes, Izuku muttered to the empty room, throwing his arm over his eyes. I have to fight 7 of them. He didn't regret accepting the challenge. When he looked at Uraraka's smile, he knew he would fight 100 exes if he had to. But the practical logistics of the situation were beginning to set in. How was he supposed to hide this from the teachers? What if one of the exes was a pro hero? What if they attacked during class? What if Mr. Aizawa expelled him for engaging in unsanctioned romantic boss battles? With a heavy sigh, Izuku rolled out of bed, threw on a casual t-shirt, which literally had the word t-shirt printed on it in bold kanji, and headed downstairs. He needed coffee. He needed a strategy guide. He needed Ida. The moment Izuku's foot touched the ground floor of the common room, the ambient noise abruptly ceased. 20 pairs of eyes snapped toward him. The common room was fully occupied. Denki Kaminari had a piece of toast hanging out of his mouth. Minoru Mineta was frozen mid-reach toward the television remote. Katsuki Bakugo was glaring at him over the top of a newspaper, his red eyes narrowed in profound irritation. But the most terrifying sight was Mina Ishido. The pink-skinned girl was standing in front of a rolling whiteboard that she had presumably stolen from the study room. Pinned to the whiteboard were photographs, printed text messages, and a crude drawing of Aoyama. Red yarn connected the various pieces of evidence, forming a web of conspiracy that culminated in a giant, circled picture of Izuku and Ochako. A massive, flashing banner appeared above Mina's head, warning, encounter initiated the Gossip Queen. Midoriya, Mina said, her voice dropping an octave into a deadpan, interrogative tone. She tapped the whiteboard with a pointer stick. Sit down. We have questions. Good morning, Ishido, Izuku stammered, taking a step backward. I just came down for tea. Did you or did you not shatter the space-time continuum of Yuga Aoyama at pause and close yesterday at 1300 hours? Mina demanded, slamming her hands on the kitchen counter. I don't know what you mean by space-time. Aoyama woke up in Recovery Girl's office smelling like Roquefort cheese. Kaminari shouted, pointing an accusatory finger. He's been sobbing about his ruined aesthetic for 12 hours. He said you punched him so hard he turned into currency. Is it true you're dating Uraraka? Mineta wailed, tears streaming down his face as he bit a couch cushion. The most pure, angelic girl in our class, corrupted by the muscle nerd? I can't take it. My HP is dropping. Izuku waved his hands frantically. Guys, please, it's a misunderstanding. I mean, we went on a date, yes, but Aoyama attacked us. And the coins, Well, that's just a localized reality-warping manifestation of his bruised ego. Enough! A booming voice shattered the chaos. Tenya Ida marched into the center of the room, his robotic arm motion slicing through the air with lethal precision. He stepped in front of Izuku, shielding him like a bodyguard. Classmates, your behavior is highly inappropriate and unbecoming of UA third years, Ida declared, adjusting his glasses, which glinted menacingly in the morning light. Midoriya's romantic entanglements are his own private jurisdiction. Furthermore, interrogating him before he has consumed his morning nutritional intake is a violation of basic roommate etiquette. Oh, come on, Ida, you're his best friend, you have to know. Toru Hagakure's floating pajamas protested. Aoyama kept screaming about a league, the League of Villains? Eijiro Kurishima gasped, hardening his arms. Are they back? No, you idiots, Bakugo snapped from the armchair, aggressively flipping a page of his newspaper. Sparkles was yelling about a League of Evil Exes. It's the most pathetic, extra shit I've ever heard. If any of you wake me up crying about this again, I'll blow you all to Kingdom Come. Bakugo shot Izuku a dark, unreadable look, scoffing under his breath. Fucking nerd. Playing hero in a rom-com. Izuku swallowed hard. Even Bakugo knew. The entire school probably knew by now. Come, Midoriya, Ida said, grabbing Izuku by the collar and dragging him toward the kitchen. We must secure your caffeine and retreat to a secure location for tactical planning. Location transition, UE Support Equipment Studio. BGM, frantic, clanking machinery. An hour later, Izuku managed to escape the dorms, claiming he needed his Air Force gloves repaired after the fight. It was only half a lie. The gauntlets had sustained minor crystal shrapnel damage. The support studio was a cavern of grease, metal, and chaotic genius. Sparks flew from welding torches, and half-finished robotic exoskeletons hung from the ceiling like mechanical bats. Izuku navigated the labyrinth of workstations, looking for the familiar mess of pink dreadlocks. Handsome? Izuku called out, clutching his damaged gauntlets to his chest. Are you in here? Power Loader said you had studio time today. Suddenly, the floor beneath him gave way. Clang! A hidden trapdoor flipped open, and Izuku yelped as he plummeted into darkness. He landed on a pile of surprisingly soft, flame-retardant mattresses in a sub-basement workshop. Before he could even sit up, a heavy weight pinned him down. A pair of yellow, crosshair-like eyes stared intently into his. New character unlocked, Mei Hatsum. Class, the Mad Mechanic. Status, clingy. Izuku-in! Mei Hatsum shrieked, her face inches from his. She was covered in motor oil, wearing heavy goggles on her forehead and a maniacal grin. You came back to me. I knew you couldn't stay away from my babies for too long. Izuku's face instantly burned a bright, tomato red. H. Hatsum. Personal space. You're very close. And heavy. I've been working on a new baby all night. Mei ignored his protests, rolling off him and aggressively dragging him to his feet. She linked her arm tightly through his, pressing herself against his side. It's an exoskeleton that runs entirely on the user's adrenaline. I need my favorite crash test dummy to take it for a spin. We're going to make so much beautiful data together today. Izuku tried to gently pull his arm away, but Mei's grip was like an industrial vice. Over the past 2 years, he had spent countless hours in this lab testing her inventions. To Izuku, it was a professional necessity. He needed gear to handle one for all. But somewhere along the line, Mei had misinterpreted his frequent visits. Because Izuku was too polite and terrified to tell her no, Mei had constructed a wild, entirely one-sided narrative that they were practically married through the shared bond of engineering. Hatsum, actually, I just need a quick repair on my gloves, Izuku said, holding up the damaged gear. I was in a fight yesterday. An unofficial one, Mei gasped, snatching the gloves. She examined the crystal scoring on the metal, her eyes narrowing. Wait. This isn't villain damage. This is localized refractive laser damage, specifically naval laser damage. She dropped the gloves on a workbench and whirled around, stepping uncomfortably close to Izuku again. She grabbed him by the shoulders, her expression suddenly serious. Izuku. Are the rumors true? What rumors? Izuku sweated. A dialogue tree appeared in his vision. A deny everything. B confess to the date. C jump back into the trapdoor. D distract her with a schematic. He chose A. Rumors are just rumors, Hatsum. May's eyes welled with dramatic, anime-sized tears. Don't lie to me. Power Loader told me you were seen at a cat cafe. With a girl. A gravity girl. Are you cheating on my babies, Izuku? After all the time we spent together in this dark, sweaty basement? We weren't doing anything inappropriate in the basement. Izuku yelled, waving his arms to dispel any eavesdroppers. We were calibrating iron saws. We made babies together. May wailed, dramatically throwing the back of her hand against her forehead. She meant gadgets, but anyone walking by wouldn't know that. We sweat together. You let me strap a rocket to your spine. That means something, Izuku. It means we have a future. Hatsum, we are not dating. We have never dated. Izuku pleaded. May froze. Her tears instantly vanished, replaced by a terrifying, blank stare. Not dating? We are friends. And hero and support tech. That's it. May slowly turned away, picking up a massive, terrifyingly sharp wrench. I see. I see how it is. You're going through a phase. A little heroic rebellion. She spun around, pointing the wrench at him. Fine, date the gravity girl. But when your shoes explode mid-air because they lack my loving calibration, don't come crying to me. Wait, are you going to sabotage my gear? Of course not. I'm a professional. May huffed, snatching his gloves and shoving him toward the exit stairs. I'll fix these by tomorrow. But consider our exclusive testing contract. On probation. She slammed the basement door behind him. Izuku stood in the stairwell, his heart pounding. Relationship status. May Hatsum strained. Warning, you have not properly broken up with the not-girlfriend. I really need to figure out how to talk to girls, Izuku whispered into the darkness. Location, UA Cafeteria Lunch Rush. Time, 12:30 p.m. The UA cafeteria was bustling. Izuku sat at a corner table, pushing a bowl of katsudon around with his chopsticks. His appetite, usually ravenous from one for all's caloric demands, was non-existent. Midoriya, you must consume your carbohydrates. You are operating at an emotional deficit, Ida said, aggressively chopping the air with his left hand while elegantly eating a bowl of beef stew with his right. I can't eat, Ida. Hatsum thinks I'm cheating on her. The whole school thinks I'm an underground fight club champion. And I don't even know who I have to fight next. Which brings us to the primary objective, Ida said, pushing his glasses up. He reached into his UA blazer and produced a thick, heavily tabbed manila folder. He slammed it onto the table. What is that? Izuku asked. I am class president. It is my duty to ensure the physical and emotional safety of my classmates, Ida stated. After the incident yesterday, I spent the evening compiling a complete intelligence dossier on Uraraka's interpersonal history over the last 2 years. Izuku stared at him. Ida, did you stalk her? I utilized publicly available social media, cross-referenced with cafeteria seating charts, rumor mill algorithms provided by Hagakure, and my own deductive reasoning. Ida defended proudly. I call it Operation, plus ultra-romance reconnaissance. Before Izuku could open the folder, a shadow fell over the table. Ochako Uraraka stood there holding a tray of mochi and green tea. She looked exhausted. The magenta streak in her hair seemed a little less vibrant today, and she wore a heavy UA Letterman jacket despite the warm weather. Hey guys, she said quietly, sliding into the booth next to Izuku. Uraraka! Izuku sat up straight. How are you? Are you okay? Did recovery girl. I'm fine, Deku. Just a little overwhelmed. She glanced at the thick manila folder Ida was resting his hand on. Is that a comprehensive breakdown of your romantic history? Yes, Ida said bluntly. Midoriya is currently flying blind. If he is to survive the League of Evil Exes, he requires data. Ochako winced, hiding her face behind her hands. God, this is so embarrassing. Ida, please tell me you didn't include the time I dated the guy from Shiketsu who only communicated in haikus. Subject 5 is thoroughly documented. Yes, Ida nodded gravely. Izuku gently pushed the folder aside. He turned to Ochako, softening his voice. Uraraka, you don't have to talk about this if you don't want to. I can just fight them as they come. I don't care who they are. Ochako lowered her hands. She looked at Izuku, her brown eyes filled with a mixture of immense gratitude and deep guilt. No, Deku. You deserve to know. If you're going to put yourself on the line for me, I have to be honest with you. She took a deep breath, wrapping her hands around her warm teacup. A small, glowing icon of a heart with a lock on it appeared above her head. Quest event, unlocking the backstory. During our first year, Ochako began, her voice steady but quiet. I was so focused. I wanted to be a great hero to help my parents. And I had feelings for you, Deku. I think everyone knew that. Izuku's face flushed, but he remained silent, listening intently. But then, you got so strong, she continued. You, Bakugo, and Todoroki. You became this untouchable trio. You were fighting Overhaul, fighting Shigaraki, unlocking new quirks. And I was just floating rocks. That's not true, Izuku interrupted fiercely. You saved me. You saved so many people. Your quirk is incredible. I know it is now, she smiled sadly. But back then, I felt like I was being left behind. I felt so small, Izuku. I was stressed, lonely, and frankly, I was terrified that I wasn't good enough to stand by your side. So, I pushed those feelings away. I locked them in a box. She looked down at the table. And when you lock away your real feelings, you start looking for distractions. During our second year, I started going to mixed school training camps. I started hanging out with different crowds. I was looking for someone to make me feel important, but without the pressure of, destiny and world saving. So you dated, Ida supplied clinically. I dated, Ochako confirmed, rubbing her arm. And because I was in a bad headspace, I attracted bad people. Or rather, I attracted guys with huge egos who wanted a cute, supportive girl to boost their own status. They didn't really care about me. They cared about the idea of me. And when I inevitably realized they were toxic and broke it off, they didn't take it well. Izuku felt a surge of protective anger flare in his chest. One for all sparked faintly beneath his skin. They hurt you? No, not physically, Ochako said quickly. But emotionally? Yeah. They were manipulative. They made me feel like I was the problem. That's why they formed this stupid league. Because they can't handle the fact that I moved on, and they especially can't handle the fact that I want to be with someone who is genuinely good. She looked up at Izuku, her eyes shining. Someone like you. Critical hit. Player 1 has taken massive emotional damage, in a good way. Izuku felt his heart hammer against his ribs. He reached out and gently laid his hand over hers. I'm not going to let them bother you anymore, Ochako. I promise. Midoriya is correct, Ida said, adjusting his glasses. We will defeat these miscreants with the power of superior strategy and authorized, proportional violence. Now, let us review the primary threat. Ida flipped the folder open. He pulled out a glossy, high-definition photograph of a boy with messy, dark hair and a charming, almost overwhelmingly handsome smile. Wait, Izuku said, leaning in. I know him. That's Shindo. From Ketsubutsu Academy, correct, Ida said. Third-year hero student. Quirk vibrate. He can create massive tremors by shaking the earth or the air. X number 2, Ochako sighed, looking at the picture with immense distaste. I dated him for 2 months right after the provisional license exams. He seemed so sweet. Like the perfect gentleman. He bought me flowers, took me to nice dinners. What went wrong? Izuku asked. He's a two-faced sociopath, Ochako said flatly. Behind closed doors, he's arrogant, deeply insecure, and incredibly mean. He used his nice guy persona to manipulate everyone around him. When I caught him bad-mouthing my parents' construction company, saying they were lower-class peasants, I dumped my iced coffee on his head and walked out. A highly appropriate tactical retreat, Ida praised. Shindo, Izuku muttered, his mind already analyzing. Vibrate quirk. Capable of leveling entire city blocks. Causes aftershocks. Weakness. Aftershocks affect his own body if he overuses it. He's incredibly strong, Deku, Ochako warned. Much stronger than Aoyama. He's going to use his nice persona to try and get under your skin. You can't trust a word he says. Before Izuku could respond, a sudden commotion erupted near the entrance of the cafeteria. Where is he? Where is my muscle dummy? Izuku froze. The entire cafeteria went silent. Marching through the double doors, wearing a welding mask pushed up on her head and wielding a blowtorch that was currently ignited, was Mei Hatsum. Oh no, Izuku whispered, sinking low in his seat. Deku? Ochako asked, raising an eyebrow. Is Hatsum looking for you? Midoriya, Ida said sternly. Did you fail to resolve the Hatsum parameter? Mei spotted him. Her crosshair eyes locked onto the table. More specifically, they locked onto the fact that Izuku's hand was resting on top of Ochako's hand. A dark, ominous aura, resembling a cartoonish thundercloud, materialized over Mei's head. Izuku! Mei shrieked, marching toward the table, the blowtorch hissing menacingly. I spent the last hour thinking about it. We need to go to couples counseling. I've already built a therapy bot that analyzes our vocal stress patterns. Ochako slowly pulled her hand away from Izuku's. She looked at Mei, then at Izuku. The air around her grew heavy. Literally. A stray napkin on the table began to float upward. Deku, Ochako said, her voice dangerously calm. Why is Hatsum talking about couples counseling? She's confused. Izuku panicked, waving his hands. She thinks testing support gear is a romantic commitment. I swear I never. Don't you deny our bond? Mei yelled, slamming her hands on the table right next to Ida's dossier. We have history. We've bled together. I've seen you without your shirt on, during medical checkups for harness fittings, but she conveniently left that out. Ochako stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. Uraraka, wait, it's not what it sounds like. It's fine, Midoriya, Ochako said softly. The use of his surname felt like a dagger to his chest. I get it. You have your own complicated things going on. I shouldn't have dumped all my baggage on you. No, that's not it at all. Izuku stood up, reaching for her, but Ochako turned away, picking up her tray. I have to get to rescue training. See you in class, Ida? She didn't look back as she walked quickly out of the cafeteria. Izuku stood there, devastated. His HP bar plummeted to critical red. Mei leaned over the table, grinning triumphantly. So, I was thinking we could calibrate the new suspension boots tonight. Hatsum, stop! Izuku yelled, his voice echoing in the quiet cafeteria. Mei blinked, taken aback. Izuku had never raised his voice at her. Ever. We are not dating, Izuku said firmly, looking her dead in the eye. We have never been dating. You are a genius inventor, and I rely on your gear. But that is strictly professional. I am in love with Ochako Uraraka. I am fighting 7 superpowered ex-boyfriends to date her. I am not going to let you sabotage this because you want a dedicated test subject. Mei stared at him. The cafeteria held its collective breath. Slowly, the manic energy drained from Mei's face. She looked down at the blowtorch in her hand, then clicked it off. Professional, she repeated softly. Yes, Izuku said, his anger fading into guilt. He hadn't wanted to be harsh, but she left him no choice. I'm sorry if I led you on by not being clear. But you have to respect my boundaries, Hatsum. Mei was silent for a long moment. Then, she adjusted her goggles. Fine. If that's how the client wants it. The suspension boots will be ready by 1800 hours. Pick them up yourself. She turned and walked away. There was no chaotic sprint, no shouting about babies. She just walked out. Ida adjusted his glasses, breaking the tension. A harsh but necessary tactical maneuver, Midoriya. You have secured your flank. But you have sustained heavy collateral damage to your primary objective. Izuku slumped back into the booth, putting his head in his hands. I messed up, Ida. She looked so hurt. Uraraka is strong. But she is currently plagued by insecurities regarding her past, Ida analyzed. You must prove to her that your commitment is unwavering, and I believe the opportunity to do so is imminent. Ida pointed at the table. Sitting right where Mei had slammed her hands was something that definitely had not been there a moment ago. It was an envelope. It was jet black, made of heavy parchment, and sealed with a dollop of crimson wax stamped with a stylized K, for Katsubutsu. Where did that come from? Izuku asked, sitting up. It appears to have materialized via some sort of localized teleportation quirk, Ida theorized. Or perhaps a very fast ninja. Izuku reached out and broke the wax seal. He pulled out a piece of thick, expensive cardstock. Written in elegant, sweeping calligraphy was a message. Midoriya Izuku, word reaches me that you have chosen to associate yourself with the delightful, if somewhat misguided, Uraraka Ochako. Furthermore, I hear you engaged in a rather vulgar display of violence against poor Yuga. I cannot allow a brute to manipulate her any further. She requires someone with refinement. Someone who understands her true place. Consider this a formal challenge. Meet me at Yue Ground Beta tonight at 2000 hours. Come alone. Let us see if the successor has the foundation to withstand a real tremor. Cordially, Yo Shindo, League of Evil Exes, Member 2. Izuku stared at the letter. The elegant handwriting seemed to vibrate slightly on the page, as if imbued with the sender's quirk. The image of Ochako walking away, her shoulders slumped, burned in his mind. Shindo had hurt her. Shindo thought she was beneath him. Shindo thought he could dictate her life. Green lightning sparked involuntarily around Izuku's clenched fist. The letter crumpled in his grip. A massive, fiery text box exploded into his vision, crackling with 8-bit energy. New quest. Tremors of jealousy. Objective, defeat Yoshindo. Status, enraged. Izuku looked up at Ida, his eyes glowing with the raw, untamed power of one for all. Ida. Yes, Midoriya? Tell Power Loader I'm going to need those suspension boots after all. Izuku stood up, cracking his knuckles. I have an earthquake to stop. Save file loaded. Midoriya _Izuku slot _1. Location. Yue High School corridors. Time, 19:15 hours. Current objective, retrieve upgraded gear. Proceed to ground beta. The evening sun had long since dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep, bruised shades of violet and indigo. Izuku Midoriya walked down the empty, echoing halls of UA's main building. He was fully suited up in his hero costume Zeta, the dark green jumpsuit, the reinforced knee pads, the scarred, battle-worn metal respirator resting around his neck. His heart beat a steady, rhythmic drum in his chest. Ba-thump. Ba-thump. A translucent, 16-bit inventory screen hovered at the edge of his vision. Equipment, costume Zeta, durability 85%, Air Force gloves, durability 90% repaired. Slot empty waiting on footwear. Izuku descended the stairs into the basement level, pushing open the heavy steel doors to the support studio. The usual cacophony of explosions, whirring drills, and frantic muttering was entirely absent. The studio was dark, save for a single, stark LED work lamp illuminating a workbench in the center of the room. Mei Hatsum sat on a stool, her back perfectly straight. She wasn't wearing her usual grease-stained overalls, but rather her standard Yue uniform, buttoned all the way up. It was deeply unnatural. Hatsum? Izuku called out softly, stepping into the light. Mei didn't turn around. She simply pushed a heavy metal case across the workbench. Item designation, Iron Sols version 2.4. Code name, suspension boots. Calibrated for a baseline user weight of 65 kilograms, accounting for exponential kinetic output. Her voice was flat. Professional. Devoid of the chaotic, affectionate mania that usually defined her. It made Izuku's stomach twist with guilt. He walked over and opened the case. Inside sat his red high-top boots, but they had been heavily modified. The soles were now lined with sleek, shock-absorbing microhydraulics and complex kinetic dampeners. They absorb impact and repurpose it into vertical momentum, Mei stated, her yellow crosshair eyes fixed on a blueprint on the wall. The harder you hit the ground, the higher you can launch yourself. A built-in hover burst mechanic allows for a 0.5-second suspension in midair at the apex of a jump. Useful for unstable terrain. Izuku lifted one of the boots. It was heavier, but perfectly balanced. Hatsum, thank you. These are incredible. I am a professional inventor. You are a hero course student. Quality is guaranteed, she replied stiffly. Izuku swapped his standard shoes for the new boots, securing the reinforced straps. He stood up, testing his weight. They felt amazing, like coiled springs waiting to be unleashed. He looked at Mei, who was pointedly organizing a tray of perfectly sorted screws. Mei, Izuku said softly, dropping her surname. She paused, her hand hovering over a titanium bolt. I meant what I said earlier. You are a genius. I rely on you. And I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. I really care about Uraraka. I have to do this. Mei was silent for a long moment. Then, without looking at him, she held up a small, remote-controlled detonator. If you break my babies tonight, Midoriya, she said, her voice trembling just a fraction, I will hunt you down and use you as a lightning rod for my new weather control satellite. A small smile touched Izuku's lips. Understood. Item acquired, suspension boots, agility 20, jump height 50%. Relationship status, Mei had some recovering. Izuku turned and jogged out of the studio. It was time. Location, Ground Beta Sector 4. Time, 1955 hours. Environmental hazard unknown. Ground Beta was a massive, sprawling replica of a modern metropolis, used for urban combat training. Tonight, it was a ghost town. The artificial streetlights cast long, eerie shadows across the empty pavement. The silence was absolute, broken only by the soft whir-hiss of Izuku's new suspension boots as he walked down the center of the main avenue. He clenched and unclenched his fists. Green electricity, the visual manifestation of One for All, flickered across his skin. Yo Shindo. Quirk vibrate. Ex-boyfriend number 2. Ida's dossier replayed in his mind. Shindo was known for his tactical mind and his devastating area of effect attacks. He was a powerhouse from Ketsubutsu Academy, a school that heavily rivaled UA. Midoriya Izuku. The voice echoed down the concrete canyon of the fake city. Izuku stopped dead in his tracks. Standing in the center of an intersection 50 yards ahead was a figure. The streetlights illuminated him perfectly. Yo Shindo wore his hero costume. A sleek, dark bodysuit was stylized, shock-absorbing armor plating, a high collar, and a utility belt. His dark hair was perfectly tousled, and he wore a warm, incredibly handsome, and entirely fake smile. A glowing, jagged text box ripped into existence above his head. Boss encounter Yo Shindo. Status, Evil X2. Class, the Two-Faced Tremor. You're early, Shindo called out, his voice smooth and incredibly polite. He took a few steps forward, his hands resting casually in his pockets. I appreciate punctuality. It shows respect. Something UA students often lack, in my experience. Izuku didn't relax his stance. Shindo. You sent the letter. I did, Shindo nodded, stopping a polite 20 feet away. He looked Izuku up and down, his eyes scanning the green hero costume with mild amusement. I must say, I'm a bit disappointed. I expected the great successor of All Might to look a bit more imposing. You look like a nervous intern. Where is she, Shindo? What do you want with Uraraka? Izuku demanded, ignoring the insult. Shindo let out a soft, melodic chuckle. Where is she? Safe in her dorm, I imagine. Crying, probably. She does that a lot when things get difficult. It's one of her cuter flaws. Izuku felt a spike of anger, hot and sharp, pierce his chest. Don't talk about her like that. Like what? Shindo asked, his smile widening, though his eyes remained completely cold. Like I know her? Midoriya, you took her on one date to a cat cafe. I dated her for 2 months. We shared dinners. We shared secrets. We shared quite a bit. Shindo let the implication hang in the air, thick and toxic. You think you know her because you sit next to her in homeroom? You don't know the first thing about Ochako Uraraka. I know she dumped you, Izuku shot back, his voice dropping into a dangerous register. Shindo's smile twitched. Just for a microsecond. The facade cracked, revealing the boiling, arrogant rage underneath. She was confused, Shindo said, his voice losing its polite lilt, becoming hard and grating. She was going through a phase, a little slumming it experience to distract herself from the fact that she's a second-rate hero with a gag reflex quirk. Crack. The concrete beneath Izuku's boots splintered as One for All surged to 15%. Status effect, and rage flashed across Izuku's vision. Take that back, Izuku growled. Why should I? Shindo laughed, pulling his hands out of his pockets. He spread his arms wide. She's addicted to the drama, Midoriya. She doesn't want a nice, boring, sunshine boy like you. She wants someone who shakes her world. She wants a bad boy. She wants power. She just got scared when she realized how much of it I had. You're not a bad boy, Izuku said, staring Shindo dead in the eyes. You're just a bully with a superiority complex. You didn't shake her world. You just made her sick. Shindo's face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated malice. The handsome hero in training vanished, replaced by a bitter, vicious egoist. You smug little Yui brat, Shindo hissed. I'm going to shatter every bone in your body, and then I'm going to send her pictures of the pieces. Let's see if she still wants to date a jigsaw puzzle. Shindo slammed both of his hands onto the pavement. Boss Phase 1, seismic shift initiated, bass drop. There was no sound at first, only a feeling. A horrifying, bone-rattling vibration that shot up through the soles of Izuku's boots and vibrated his very teeth in his skull. The air itself seemed to blur, like heat shimmering off a highway. Then, ground beta exploded. The earthquake wasn't a natural tremor. It was a localized, hyper-focused wave of kinetic destruction. The paved intersection heaved upward, shattering into massive, jagged slabs of concrete the size of minivans. Buildings groaned, their glass facades shattering outward in a tidal wave of sparkling shrapnel. Whoa! Izuku shouted, throwing his arms up to protect his face. The ground beneath him simply ceased to exist, replaced by a churning sea of rising and falling geometric blocks. Video game logic override engaged. The environment instantly transformed. The shattered slabs of concrete didn't fall back to earth. They hovered, rose, and sank in a chaotic, shifting rhythm, suspended by Shindo's localized vibration waves. The street had become a deadly, three-dimensional platforming level over a massive sinkhole. Dance for me, UA! Shindo roared, standing atop a rising pillar of asphalt, his hands glowing with intense, vibrating energy. Izuku fell. A slab of concrete the size of a billboard rushed up to meet him. Suspension boots, Izuku thought. He twisted his body mid-air, bringing his feet down perfectly flat against the rising slab. Catch and kiss. The micro-hydraulics in Mei's boots compressed, absorbing the bone-crushing impact of the rock. Instead of shattering his legs, the kinetic energy transferred into the soles. Izuku pushed off, and the boots unleashed the stored energy. He launched himself 80 feet into the air, a green comet against the night sky. Perfect parry. Jump boost multiplier x2. What? Shindo yelled, tracking Izuku's ascent. He thrust his hands upward. Airquake! A shockwave of compressed, vibrating air shot toward Izuku like an invisible cannonball. Full cowl, 20%. Izuku muttered. He contorted his body, narrowingly dodging the shockwave. The air blast clipped his shoulder, and the sheer vibrational force spun him out of control. Damage taken, 150. Status, dizzy. Izuku plummeted toward a cluster of rapidly sinking concrete platforms. He aimed for a small chunk, landing heavily. The chunk immediately began to vibrate violently, threatening to shake him off into the dark abyss below. You can't touch me, Midoriya! Shindo taunted, effortlessly hopping from one floating slab to another, sending shockwaves through the debris to keep the entire arena in a state of chaotic motion. Your super strength means nothing if you can't stand still. You're out of your element. Izuku gritted his teeth, leaping from the sinking platform to a rising one. He had to time it perfectly. Jump, land, compress, launch. He was playing a hyperlethal game of hopscotch. You think this is a game? Shindo yelled, slamming his foot down on his platform. A ripple of force shot through the floating debris. Every platform in a 50-foot radius suddenly flipped upside down. Izuku scrambled, sliding off the edge of his rock. He clawed at the concrete, his fingers digging into the rough surface as he hung over the abyss. You're pathetic. Shindo mocked, walking to the edge of his own platform, looking down at Izuku. Uraraka told me you were strong. She told me you were brave. She built you up like some sort of invincible god. But look at you! Hanging on by your fingernails. Izuku looked up at Shindo. The anger wasn't hot anymore. It was cold. Deep, freezing, and focused. She told you. I was brave. Izuku grunted, pulling himself up slightly. Oh, she wouldn't shut up about you. Shindo spat, his face twisting with ugly jealousy. Deku this, Deku that. Deku saved me. Deku is so amazing. It made me sick. I'm the top student at Ketsubutsu. I'm going to be in the top 10. And she dumped me for a mascot. Shindo raised his right hand, preparing a point-blank vibration blast to knock Izuku into the void. Game over, Midoriya. Izuku closed his eyes. He reached deep within himself, past the glowing, stockpiled power of One for All, into the dark, swirling void where the vestiges of the past users resided. I need a lifeline, Izuku thought. I need to bridge the gap. A familiar, raspy voice echoed in his mind. You got it, kid. Let her rip. Izuku's eyes snapped open. They weren't just green anymore. They glowed with a terrifying, luminescent intensity. I'm not a mascot, Izuku whispered. Skill unlocked/equipped, Black Whip. Thick, undulating tendrils of crackling, black and teal energy erupted from Izuku's right arm. They shot upward like a cluster of vipers, bypassing Shindo entirely and latching onto the reinforced steel girder of a half-destroyed skyscraper looming over the battlefield. Shindo blinked. What the? Izuku let go of the rock. He plummeted for a split second before the Black Whip snapped taut. With a sickening lurch, Izuku swung like a terrifying, super-powered pendulum. He soared upward, the G-force threatening to rip his arm out of its socket. He crested the arc, soaring high above Shindo's platform. Class change, the aerial acrobat. He has 2 quirks. Shindo gasped, stumbling backward. I'm just getting started. Izuku yelled from above. He released the girder, firing another tendril of Black Whip into the side of an adjacent building. He swung again, circling the floating debris field at breakneck speed. Shindo thrives on ground control, Izuku analyzed rapidly. As long as I touch his platforms, he can track me and off-balance me. The only way to beat a ground-type boss is to stay in the air. Izuku became a blur of green and black. He fired Black Whip like dual grappling hooks, swinging, zipping, and vaulting through the ruined architecture of ground beta. He was Spider-Man crossed with a ballistic missile. Get down here and fight me like a man! Shindo roared, his composure completely shattered. He began firing rapid, panicked shockwaves into the air, trying to swat Izuku out of the sky like a fly. Boom! 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 Invisible waves of force shattered windows and pulverized floating rocks. Izuku wove through the barrage. He used his Air Force gloves to fire pressurized air bullets, altering his trajectory mid-swing to dodge Shindo's attacks. Stop moving! Shindo screamed. His handsome face was red and covered in sweat. The overuse of his vibrate quirk was beginning to show. His own arms were shaking uncontrollably, the recoil tearing at his muscles. Boss status, fatigued/desperate. You wanted to know why Uraraka likes me? Izuku yelled, swinging around a falling billboard. He released his Black Whip, entering a freefall directly toward Shindo. Because I don't try to control her world. Izuku shouted, pulling his right arm back. One for All flared to 30%, then 45%. Red veins of power crawled up his skin. I just want to be a part of it. Shindo looked up. The shadow of the descending hero covered him. Panic set in. Shindo crossed his arms, channeling every ounce of his remaining power into a massive, defensive dome of pure kinetic vibration. Tremor, maximum magnitude. Shindo screamed. The air around him distorted so violently it looked like reality itself was tearing apart. Izuku didn't flinch. He fired Black Whip from his left arm, anchoring it to a piece of debris directly behind Shindo, using it to accelerate his fall even faster, turning himself into a human meteor. Manchester! Izuku roared, bringing his right leg down in a devastating axe kick. He collided with Shindo's vibration dome. For a fraction of a second, the two forces stalemated. The air shrieked, a high-pitched whine of compressed energy. Izuku felt his bones rattling, threatening to snap. But Shindo was exhausted. Izuku was fighting for the girl he loved. Smash! Izuku's reinforced iron soul shattered the vibration dome like spun glass. His heel connected cleanly with Shindo's shoulder. The impact was cataclysmic. A shockwave ripped horizontally across ground beta, instantly vaporizing the remaining floating debris. The sheer force drove Shindo straight down into the asphalt, cratering the street in a 20-foot wide web of destruction. Critical hit. 15,000 DMG. Armor broken. Shindo let out a pathetic squeak as his HP bar instantly depleted to 0. A blinding white light consumed his body. Izuku hit the ground, rolling to dissipate the momentum, his suspension boots hissing as they absorbed the residual shock. He popped up into a defensive crouch, gasping for air, the green lightning slowly dying down. When the dust cleared, the crater was empty. Shindo was gone. In his place, floating gently to the ground, were several items. Ding! Izuku cautiously walked to the center of the crater. He knelt down. Sitting on the shattered asphalt were 5 large, premium tubs of tremor hold, extreme volume hair gel. Next to them was a neat stack of 8x10 glossy, autographed headshots of Shindo winking at the camera. And right in the middle, shining under the streetlights, was a pristine, diamond-encrusted 10,000 yen coin. Victory! 5,000 EXP gained. Level up! Item dropped. Egotistical hair gel x5, narcissistic headshots x50. Gold gained, 10,000 yen. I did it, Izuku panted, dropping onto his backside, his adrenaline suddenly crashing. His muscles ached, and his head spun, but a massive, triumphant grin broke out across his face. 2 down, 5 to go. Deku? Izuku snapped his head up. Running down the ruined avenue, her Yui track jacket billowing behind her, was Ochako Uraraka. Her face was pale with terror, her eyes wide as she took in the devastated landscape of ground beta. She vaulted over a chunk of concrete, her boots hitting the ground as she sprinted toward him. Deku! Are you okay? I heard the explosions from the dorms. Ida told me what happened, he said. Shindo challenged you. She slid to a halt, dropping to her knees next to him. Her hands hovered over him frantically, checking for broken bones. Are you hurt? Did he use his maximum tremor? I told you he was dangerous, you idiot. Why did you come alone? Uraraka, I'm fine. Izuku laughed softly, catching her hands in his. I'm okay. See? All limbs attached. No broken bones. Ochako looked down at his hands holding hers. She looked up at his face, streaked with dust and sweat, but smiling that bright, unwavering smile. Then she noticed the loot drop in the crater behind him. She stared at the tubs of hair gel and the stack of glossy headshots. Is that? She covered her mouth. Did he explode into hair products? And headshots? Izuku nodded solemnly. He had a very high opinion of himself. A giggle bubbled up in Ochako's throat. She tried to suppress it, but the sheer absurdity of the situation, combined with the relief that Izuku was safe, was too much. The giggle turned into a laugh, and soon she was burying her face in his chest, laughing until tears pricked her eyes. Izuku blushed furiously, but he didn't pull away. He tentatively wrapped his arms around her shoulders, holding her close. She smelled like strawberries and ozone. I'm sorry, she sniffled, pulling back slightly, though she didn't leave his embrace. Her cheeks were pink. I'm sorry I ran away at lunch. I overreacted about Hatsum. Ida explained that she just has boundary issues and you were trying to fix it. I was so insecure. I thought you realized I was too much trouble. You can never be too much trouble, Izuku said firmly, locking eyes with her. The surrounding destruction faded away. I told you, Ochako. I'm fighting for you, and nothing Shindo, or Aoyama, or anyone else says is going to change my mind. Ochako stared at him, her breath catching. The moonlight reflected in her wide brown eyes. He said some really awful things, didn't he? She whispered. He did, Izuku admitted. He said you only liked bad boys. Ochako let out a derisive scoff. He wishes he was a bad boy. He's just a jerk who spends 2 hours on his hair. She reached up, gently brushing a stray, dusty green curl out of Izuku's eyes. I don't want a bad boy, Izuku. I never did. I just wanted someone who made me feel safe. Someone who looks at me like I actually matter. Her hand rested against his cheek. Izuku leaned into her touch, his heart hammering against his ribs in a completely different, much better way than it had during the fight. "You matter to me," Izuku whispered. The distance between them closed. It was a gravitational pull far stronger than her quirk. Izuku closed his eyes, his heart soaring as he felt her breath ghost across his lips. Beep beep beep. Izuku jumped out of his skin. Ochako shrieked, scrambling backward. Izuku fumbled for his utility belt, pulling out his Yui emergency communicator. The screen was flashing bright red. Incoming message, Class President Ida. Izuku hit the answer button, his face burning like a furnace. Aida! Hey! We're fine. Shindo is defeated. Turning into coins as we speak. Excellent work, Midoriya. Ida's voice boomed through the speaker, crisp and entirely unbothered by the mood he had just ruined. However, tactical celebration must be delayed. A new threat has emerged on the social horizon. A new threat? Ochako asked, leaning in. Indeed. Jiro just posted an announcement on the class group chat. She has secured backstage VIP passes for the Riot Fest Music Festival this weekend. The entire class is going. And intelligence suggests. Ida paused for dramatic effect. That subject number 3 will be performing at said festival. Izuku and Ochako looked at each other. The romantic tension popped like a soap bubble, replaced by a sense of impending dread. Subject 3. Izuku gulped. Who is Subject 3? Ochako groaned, putting her head between her knees. The brooding indie guy. The one with the eye bags. The one who thinks everyone else is a conformist sheep. Who? Izuku asked. Hitoshi Shinso. Ida's voice crackled. Prepare your auditory defenses, Midoriya. The battle of the bands approaches. Quest complete. Tremors of jealousy. New area unlocked. Riot Fest Music Festival. Prepare for X3. Izuku looked at the giant crater he had just made, then at the girl sitting next to him. Well, Izuku sighed, offering his hand to help Ochako up. I guess I'd better start listening to more underground indie rock. Ochako took his hand, pulling herself up. She smiled, squeezing his fingers tightly. Don't bother. His music is terrible anyway. Together, hand in hand, they walked out of the ruined city, ready to face whatever the League threw at them next. Save file loaded. Midoriya _Izuku slot _1. Location: Yui High School Class 3A dorms. Status: daydreaming. Current HP: 1000/1000. Mana: 100%. Izuku Midoriya was floating. Not literally, of course. His quirk, One for All, specialized in gravity-defying leaps and bone-shattering impacts, but actual, sustained levitation was strictly the domain of a certain auburn-haired girl whose face was currently occupying 99% of his processing power. Izuku sat at his desk, a pencil loosely gripped in his scarred hand, staring blankly at a complex physics equation. He had been staring at the same variable for 45 minutes. Every time he closed his eyes, the memory replayed in glorious, high-definition, 120 frames per second clarity. The ruined asphalt of ground beta. The moonlight reflecting in Ochako's wide, brown eyes. The smell of ozone and strawberry shampoo. The phantom sensation of her breath ghosting across his lips just a fraction of a second before his emergency communicator had blared like a dying smoke detector. Beep. A small, pixelated text box popped up in the corner of his vision. Relationship EXP gained, 500. Milestone almost reached, the first kiss. Status effect, severe butterflies. With a groan, Izuku let his forehead drop onto his desk. Ida, he muttered to the empty room. I love you, man, but your timing is statistically the worst in human history. It had been 3 days since he defeated Yoshindo, Evil X number 2, and watched the Ketsubutsu student disintegrate into a pile of narcissistically branded hair gel and 10,000 yen coins. The victory had solidified his resolve. He was going to defeat all 7 of them. He was going to clear Uraraka's metaphorical save file of its corrupted data, and he was going to take her on a proper, uninterrupted date, which brought him to today. Saturday. Midoriya! The door to Izuku's dorm room slammed open with the force of a Detroit smash. Tenya Ida stood in the doorway, his glasses catching the hallway light, rendering his eyes glowing, opaque rectangles of pure efficiency. He held a manila folder tucked under his arm. I knocked precisely 3 times, Ida announced, marching into the room with stiff, robotic strides. When you failed to respond within the acceptable 15-second window, I assumed you had been ambushed by another agent of the League. No ambush, Ida, Izuku sighed, sitting up and rubbing his eyes. Just physics homework. And thinking. Thinking about Uraraka. Ida adjusted his glasses. Understandable. However, romantic daydreaming must be compartmentalized. We have a critical mission parameter to address. The Riot Fest music excursion commences in exactly 3 hours. Ida slapped the manila folder onto Izuku's desk, right over his physics homework. Subject number 3, Ida said grimly. Izuku's posture instantly straightened. The love-struck fog evaporated, replaced by the razor-sharp focus of the 9th bearer of One for All. He opened the folder. Inside was a photograph of a boy with messy, gravity-defying purple hair, deep, bruised-looking eye bags, and an expression that screamed a profound, agonizing boredom with the universe. He was wearing a black turtleneck and a beanie, despite it being a warm spring day. Hitoshi Shinso, Izuku read. He knew Shinso. They had fought during the sports festival in their first year, and Shinso had successfully transferred into the hero course during their second year. They weren't exactly close friends, but there was a mutual, unspoken respect between them. I didn't know he and Uraraka. Izuku trailed off, frowning at the photograph. It was a brief, highly secretive alignment during the winter of our second year, Ida reported, tapping the paper. My intelligence suggests Uraraka was going through what sociologists refer to as a rebellious, anti-establishment phase. Shinso, with his underground hero aesthetic and general disdain for mainstream media, appealed to her darker sensibilities. Shinso isn't a bad guy, Izuku reasoned. He wants to be a hero. A rescue hero even. Why is he in the League of Evil Exes? Because, Midoriya, a new voice chimed in. Kyokujiro leaned against the doorframe, twirling one of her earphone jacks around her finger. She was already dressed for the festival in ripped black jeans, a studded leather jacket, and combat boots. Because Shinso is the biggest hipster edgelord on the planet. Izuku blinked. Jiro? How long have you been there? Long enough to hear Ida doing his whole FBI profiler routine, Jiro smirked, walking into the room. She tossed a rectangular, holographic pass onto Izuku's bed. VIP backstage pass. Don't lose it, my band goes on at 7. And you're going to need it to find Shinso. He's playing at the festival? Izuku asked. Unfortunately, Jiro groaned, rubbing her temples. He's the lead singer and synth operator for an underground indie band called The Sleep Deprived. They exclusively play songs in minor keys about how coffee is a metaphor for the hollow void of corporate heroics. Izuku stared at her. Are you serious? Deadly? They're insufferable. They don't even use real instruments, just loop pedals and emotional manipulation, Jiro said, crossing her arms. Look, Midoriya. I know Uraraka has been stressed lately. She told me about the Aoyama and Shindo fights. I'm backing you on this. Shinso treated her like a prop for his brooding artist persona. He constantly made her feel guilty for liking mainstream things, like pop music, or, being happy. Izuku felt a familiar spark of anger ignite in his chest. Shindo had manipulated her with a fake smile. Shinso, it seemed, had manipulated her with fake intellectualism. What's his damage? Izuku asked, his voice hardening. He thinks you're a corporate sellout, Midoriya, Jiro said bluntly. You're All Might's protege. You're the golden boy. In Shinso's eyes, Uraraka leaving his dark, tortured, indie underground world for the literal human embodiment of a sunshine pop song is the ultimate betrayal. Ida nodded in agreement. He believes he holds the moral and artistic high ground, which makes him incredibly dangerous. Be warned, Midoriya, Shinso will not challenge you to a fistfight like Shindo. He will attack your mind. Izuku looked back down at the photograph of the purple-haired boy. Quest target logged, Hitoshi Shinso. Class, the brooding indie guy. Warning, high intelligence. High evasion. Emotional damage output, extreme. I'll be ready, Izuku said, closing the folder. He looked up at Jiro. Thanks for the pass, Jiro. We'll be in the front row for your set. You better be, Jiro smirked, turning to leave. Oh, and Midoriya? Change your shirt. If you wear that t-shirt shirt to an indie music festival, Shinso will literally bully you to death before the boss fight even starts. Location transition. Musutafa's Central Park Riot Fest grounds. Time, 1600 hours. BGM, heavy bass, overlapping indie rock riffs, crowd chatter. The atmosphere at Riot Fest was a sensory overload of sound, color, and fried food. Musutafa's Central Park had been transformed into a sprawling canvas of alternative culture. Massive stages constructed from scaffolding and neon lights jutted into the sky. Tents selling vintage vinyl records, overpriced band merchandise, and glowing quirk-enhancing energy drinks lined the paved walkways. The air was thick with the smell of takoyaki, roasted corn, and the distinct scent of 1,000 teenagers refusing to wear deodorant out of protest. Izuku navigated the dense crowd, feeling completely out of his element. He had taken Jiro's advice to heart. He had spent an hour staring at his closet, trying to decipher what constituted indie festival wear. He had ultimately settled on a pair of slightly faded dark jeans, his signature red boots, sans maze suspension modifications, which he had safely locked in his dorm, and a vintage, washed-out gray all-mitre t-shirt from the hero's Bronze Age era, worn over a black long-sleeve thermal. He felt like an imposter. A small, floating text box above his head seemed to agree. Equipment, vintage hero merch, charisma -5 in this biome. Stealth -10. Wow. It is packed. Izuku turned around. Ochako was standing beside him, holding 2 cups of blue raspberry shaved ice. Izuku's brain momentarily stopped buffering. If Izuku looked like a kid playing dress-up, Ochako looked like she belonged on the cover of an alternative fashion magazine. She wore a black skater skirt, sheer dark tights, and an oversized, distressed denim jacket covered in obscure band patches. Her magenta streak was vividly re-dyed, standing out sharply against her dark auburn bob, which she had pinned back on one side with silver clips. She completed the look with heavy, thick-soled combat boots. "Why, you look amazing," Izuku stammered, his face instantly heating up. Critical hit. Player 1 is stunned. Ochako blushed, handing him a shaved ice. "Thanks. Jiro helped me pick it out. I wanted to blend in. Or, look like I belong here." She looked around the festival grounds, her shoulders tense. "I haven't been back to a scene like this since..." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't have to. "Since second year. Since Shinso." Izuku took the shaved ice, shifting his free hand to gently brush against hers. "Hey. We're here to have fun. To support Jiro. And to have our date. If anyone tries to ruin that, they have to go through me." Ochako looked up at him, the tension in her shoulders melting away. She smiled, a soft, genuine expression that made Izuku's chest ache in the best way possible. "My hero," she teased gently. They spent the next 2 hours actually acting like normal teenagers. It was a stark, beautiful contrast to the life-or-death struggles they usually faced. They wandered through the vendor tents, laughing at absurdly priced vintage sunglasses. They watched Denki Kaminari attempt to crowd surf during a punk rock set, only to accidentally discharge a mild shock of electricity that made the entire mosh pit's hair stand on end. They even spotted Katsuki Bakugo standing near the back of a crowd, his arms crossed, aggressively tapping his foot to a heavy metal band while pretending he hated every second of it. "Having fun?" Izuku asked, shouting slightly over the heavy bass of a nearby stage. They were sitting on a grassy hill overlooking the main thoroughfare, sharing a tray of yakisoba. "I am," Ochako nodded, twirling noodles around her chopsticks. She looked relaxed. "Happy. I was nervous about coming today. Really nervous. But being here with you makes it different. It's not dark or brooding. It's just loud. I like loud," Izuku smiled, taking a bite of his food. "Especially when it's just music, and not explosions." Ochako laughed, bumping her shoulder against his. "Amen to that." She looked at him, her gaze dropping to his lips for a fraction of a second. The ambient noise of the festival seemed to dial down. The invisible, magnetic pull that had drawn them together in the crater of ground beta returned, stronger than before. Izuku set his food down. His heart began to hammer. "Is this it? Right here on the hill?" He leaned in slightly. Ochako leaned in to meet him. Their eyes fluttered shut. Zzzzz whir beep. A deafening mechanical hum shattered the moment. A massive gust of artificial wind blew Ochako's hair violently into her face. Izuku snapped his eyes open. Hovering precisely 2 feet above their yakisoba was a terrifying, 4-rotor heavy-duty surveillance drone. It was painted bright pink and had a massive, high-definition camera lens staring directly at them. What in the world? Izuku yelled, throwing his arms up to shield Ochako from the drone's downdraft. A tinny, aggressively cheerful voice blasted from the drone's built-in PA system. Target acquired. Commencing biometric scan of test subject Midoriya. Hatsum? Izuku shouted in horror. The crowd around them stopped to stare. Murmurs broke out. People pointed their phone cameras at the hovering monstrosity. Oh good! The audio feed is working. May Hatsum's voice echoed across the grassy hill, amplified to rock concert volumes. Izuku, I was running diagnostics on your suspension boots from the dorms, but your heart rate monitor suddenly spiked to 140 beats per minute. I thought you were in combat, so I deployed the Eye in the Sky baby to provide tactical overwatch. I'm not in combat! Izuku screamed, his face burning with the heat of 1,000 suns. Turn it off, Hatsum. I'm at a music festival. A music festival? The drone lowered slightly, the camera lens zooming in with a mechanical whir, focusing entirely on Ochako, who was currently frozen in horror, her yakisoba forgotten. Oh. I see, you are with the gravity girl. Again, the cheerful tone dropped, replaced by a cold, calculating robotic cadence. Subject Midoriya. Your pupil dilation and elevated pheromone levels indicate high romantic arousal. Are you attempting to initiate courtship protocols without a verified support gear safety tether? The entire hill went dead silent. Everyone was listening, Ochako's face drained of color. She hated being the center of attention. She hated drama. Her past relationships had been full of public, humiliating spectacles. Aoyama shouting about love, Shindo throwing public tantrums when he didn't get his way. And now, she was trapped in another one, orchestrated by a girl who claimed Izuku was hers. Hatsum, shut down the drone right now. That's an order. Izuku commanded, channeling every ounce of his pro-hero authority. I am merely ensuring my test subject is operating at peak efficiency. Mei's voice argued through the speaker. We had an agreement, Izuku. Professional boundaries. But leaving your gear behind to frolic in a field of acoustic pollution is highly unprofessional. I need you in the basement. Stop talking about the basement. Izuku yelled, jumping up. He activated One for All at 5%, green lightning crackling around him. He leaped into the air, grabbed the pink drone by its landing skids, and forcefully yanked it down, smashing it into the grass. Crunch. The drone sparked, hissed, and finally died. Item destroyed. Noisy Overwatch drone. Warning, social standing decreased. Awkwardness maximized. Izuku stood panting, holding the broken drone. He looked up, a sheepish, apologetic smile on his face. Sorry about that. She's very dedicated to her engineering. He trailed off. Ochako was standing up. She wasn't looking at the crowd, and she wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the ground, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, shrinking into her oversized denim jacket. Uraraka? Izuku stepped forward, dropping the drone. I need to go to the bathroom, she whispered, her voice tight. Okay. I'll wait right here. No. She stepped back, shaking her head. I need a minute, Deku. Just a minute alone. It's too loud out here. Before he could say anything else, she turned and pushed her way through the crowd, practically jogging toward the VIP backstage entrance area. Izuku stood there, the broken drone at his feet, surrounded by staring hipsters. His HP bar plummeted. A heavy, dark cloud seemed to settle over him. Status effect, heartache. He had promised her this wouldn't happen. He had promised to keep her safe from the drama of her past, only to let the chaos of his own life ruin the moment. Izuku clenched his fists. He didn't care about the staring crowd. He didn't care about Hatsum's ruined drone. He had to find Uraraka. He had to fix this. He pulled out the VIP pass Jiro had given him and sprinted after her. Location: backstage VIP tent area. Atmosphere: tense/moody. The backstage area was a labyrinth of black canvas tents, heavy audio cables snaking across the grass, and roadies carrying equipment cases. The booming music from the festival was muffled here, replaced by the chaotic hum of pre-show preparations. Izuku ducked under a velvet rope, flashing his VIP lanyard to a bored-looking security guard. He scanned the area frantically. Uraraka? Ochako. He found her near the loading dock of the secondary stage. She was sitting on an overturned flight case, her face buried in her hands. Izuku's heart broke. He walked over slowly, his footsteps heavy. Uraraka? He said softly. She flinched, quickly wiping her eyes before looking up. She offered a fragile, unconvincing smile. Hey. Sorry. I didn't mean to run off like that. The crowd just got a little overwhelming. Izuku sat down on the flight case next to her, leaving a respectful foot of space between them. You don't have to apologize. Hatsum was way out of line. I'm going to have Aizawa-sensei confiscate her tracking equipment. I'm so sorry she embarrassed you. It's not just Hatsum, Ochako sighed, resting her chin on her hands. It's me, Izuku. It's exactly what I told you in the cafeteria. I bring this baggage with me everywhere, and now, I'm getting jealous and insecure over a girl who just wants to test boots, and I'm making a scene. She looked at him, her brown eyes filled with an agonizing vulnerability. I don't want to be the girl who constantly needs saving from her own messes. You're going to be the #1 hero. You don't need a girlfriend who causes drama every time you try to eat yakisoba. Stop, Izuku said firmly. He shifted closer, turning to fully face her. Stop doing that. Stop talking down to yourself. You are Ochako Uraraka. You went toe-to-toe with Bakugo. You float meteors. You save lives. You are the strongest, most amazing person I know. He reached out, tentatively placing his hand over hers. She didn't pull away. Hatsum is my problem, Izuku continued, his voice steady. And the League of Exes is our problem. I'm not fighting them because you're a mess. I'm fighting them because they don't appreciate how incredible you are. And I want the chance to show you. Ochako's lower lip trembled. The wall she had been trying so hard to build back up crumbled completely. She turned her hand over, intertwining her fingers tightly with his. You really mean that? She whispered. With everything I have, Izuku promised. The heavy, oppressive atmosphere began to lift. A soft, glowing light seemed to emanate from their joined hands. Relationship status restored. Bond deepened. Well. If it isn't the corporate mascot and the sellout. The voice was smooth, deep, and dripping with an almost supernatural level of condescension. Izuku and Ochako whipped their heads around. Stepping out from the shadows of a nearby equipment tent was a figure. He was tall, thin, and slouched with an exaggerated posture of absolute apathy. He wore a black turtleneck, a maroon beanie pulled low over his messy purple hair, and dark, round sunglasses despite it being nearly dusk. A thick, metallic voice modulator scarf rested loosely around his neck. He was holding a paper cup of black coffee in one hand, and a vintage, analog film camera in the other. A jagged, static-filled text box glitched into existence above his head. Boss encounter. Hitoshi Shinso. Status. Evil X3. Class. The Indie Edgelord. Ochako's grip on Izuku's hand tightened painfully. Her entire body went rigid. Shinso. Shinso took a slow sip of his coffee, wincing slightly as if the bean's origin wasn't fair trade enough for his liking. He lowered his sunglasses, revealing those deep, purple, perpetually exhausted eyes. Hello, Ochako, Shinso drawled, his voice flat and unimpressed. He looked her up and down, zeroing in on her denim jacket. I see you're still wearing the jacket I bought you at that thrift store in Shibuya. I suppose a piece of authentic culture is hard to throw away, even when you've traded your soul for mainstream approval. Izuku stood up, instinctively placing himself between Ochako and Shinso. Back off, Shinso. We're not here for a fight. A fight? Shinso chuckled, a hollow, echoing sound. He raised his analog camera and snapped a flash photo of Izuku. Clickware. Violence is the lowest form of expression, Midoriya. It's the language of the inarticulate. The opiate of the masses. I don't want to fight you. I want to deconstruct you. Shinso stepped closer, the shadow seeming to stretch and warp around him. I heard what you did to Oyama and Shindo, Shinso continued, his tone conversational, yet laced with venom. You beat them up. How very pro-hero of you. Smash the problem until it goes away. Never mind the underlying systemic issues. Never mind the emotional nuance. They attacked us. Izuku defended, feeling a headache beginning to form behind his eyes. Shinso's aura was suffocating. Did they? Shinso tilted his head. He looked past Izuku, addressing Ochako directly. Did they attack you, Ochako? Or did they just hold up a mirror to the fact that you belong with us, and not with the golden boy? Shut up, Hitoshi, Ochako snapped, standing up. Her voice was trembling, but she stood tall. You don't know anything about me anymore. You just wanted me around to look moody in your music videos and validate your superiority complex. Shinso sighed, a heavy, dramatic sigh of a misunderstood genius. You used to understand the void, Ochako. We bonded over the alienation of this hyper-capitalist hero society. We were outsiders. But then, you got a taste of the spotlight. You started doing interviews. You started smiling for the cameras. He pointed a long, pale finger at Izuku. And then you chose him. The literal poster child for the establishment. A boy whose only personality trait is screaming loud and punching hard. Izuku clenched his jaw. He could feel one for all humming beneath his skin, ready to strike. But he remembered Ida's warning. He will attack your mind. My personality is fine, Izuku said through gritted teeth. Is it? Shinso smirked, stepping within striking distance. He loomed over Izuku, his purple eyes locking onto Izuku's green ones. Let's analyze that, Midoriya. Why do you want to be a hero? To save people? Or because society conditioned you to crave validation from a dying, broken system? You're not a savior. You're a branded product. I save people because it's the right thing to do, Izuku shot back, his anger rising. So cliché, Shinso deadpanned, rolling his eyes. And why are you dating Ochako? Because you actually care about her complex, flawed, beautiful mind? Or because she's a convenient, cute accessory for your hero origin story? A little trophy for the #1 hero to put on his shelf? Boss mechanic initiated, verbal abuse. Player 1 mental defense dropping. Don't you dare talk about her like that. Izuku yelled, the green lightning finally erupting around his body. He grabbed Shinso by the collar of his turtleneck, pulling him close. I love her. I'm fighting for her because she deserves someone who doesn't treat her like garbage. Shinso didn't flinch. He didn't try to break Izuku's grip. He just smiled. A slow, terrifying, knowing smile. Is that what you really think, hero? Shinso asked softly, his voice echoing with an unnatural resonance. The trap was sprung. Izuku's brain recognized the danger a millisecond too late. He had engaged in the dialogue. He had let the anger override his tactical training. The fundamental rule of fighting Hitoshi Shinso, never answer his questions. But Izuku, fueled by righteous fury and protective instinct, opened his mouth. Yes. Izuku roared. Bzzzzzt. The world snapped. It didn't fade to black. It glitched. The 16-bit UI overlay of Izuku's vision suddenly fractured into a million jagged, colorful pixels. A horrific, screeching dial-up modem sound blasted through his skull, drowning out the music of the festival, drowning out Ochako's sudden scream. Izuku's body went completely rigid. The green lightning of One for All instantly extinguished. His grip on Shinso's collar loosened, his arms dropping heavily to his sides like cut marionette strings. Critical error, connection lost. Player 1 has been disconnected. Deku? Ochako cried out, rushing forward, grabbing his arm. Deku, snap out of it. He brainwashed you. Deku! Izuku couldn't hear her. From the outside, Izuku Midoriya was standing perfectly still, his eyes wide, blank, and completely devoid of life. He was a statue trapped in a waking coma. Shinso casually dusted off his turtleneck collar where Izuku had grabbed him. He took another sip of his coffee, looking down at Izuku's paralyzed form with supreme indifference. Checkmate, Shinso murmured. He looked at Ochako, who was desperately shaking Izuku's shoulders, tears welling in her eyes. I told you, Ochako. He's simple. Predictable. A pawn in a game he doesn't even understand. Shinso adjusted his voice modulator scarf, turning it on. When he spoke next, his voice didn't just echo. It commanded the very air around them, imbued with the full, terrifying power of his quirk. Midoriya Izuku, Shinso commanded, his voice vibrating with dark, compelling energy. Turn around. Walk out of this festival. And never speak to Uraraka Ochako again. Inside the dark, silent void of his own mind, Izuku's consciousness screamed. But his body didn't belong to him anymore. Slowly, agonizingly, Izuku's physical body turned away from Ochako. His dead, blank eyes stared forward into the night, and he began to walk away. Game over. Continue? 9, 8, 7.